Good morning, team. Happy Monday. Welcome back to the Just Fuel Show. It's been a minute. I'm definitely excited about today's conversation. I apologize if it's echoing in here. We're in a new space. But today we're going to talk about veganism. I think Dr. Mike has a study that he wants to talk about. Hi, Dr. Coley. So I'm excited to jump into this conversation with him. One second. Good morning, everybody. Dr. Mike, I think I see you, but I don't think I see you in the VitaHustle account. Good morning, team. Happy Monday. Glad you like the sweatshirt. Thank you. Hi, team. Wait for it. Okay. Dr. Mike, I see you, but not in the VitaHustle account. Hold on. Ah, there. Good morning. Good morning.
Hey, what's going on?
It's been so long.
I know, it really has.
I know. I'm going to turn off all these comments. Also, I am not using Wi-Fi right now, so if any point in time it gets all messed up, let me know. I apologize.
All good.
We're in a new setting.
I noticed the new setting. I didn't know if it was a virtual background or if it was like actually a new setting.
No, we're at my uncle's house. This is a new setting.
That legit happened to me the other day. I was like, I was to someone like, "Oh, are you in a loft in Boston?" And they were like, "No, this is just a virtual background." I was like,
See, I always think the virtual backgrounds are so shitty, so I never use them. I always think they look so bad. And then you
Me
move,
too.
and then you pop into one. And
I agree.
how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm
Training
so-
hard?
What?
Training hard?
You or me?
You seem like you're training hard.
We are. I'm training hard, but it's just not the same. I'm always complaining. How I feel like all of a sudden I hit 35, and granted, a lot of stuff happened last year, but I'm like, it is not the same, Rebel. Like, why is it taking so long? Like, I can do all the things, but my recovery time is so much longer. So I'm
Are you
trying.
like within a session or between sessions?
Between sessions, I'm totally fine. Within
Yep.
a session,
Yep.
I'm just like pooped. I mean, I show it in all the Instagram stuff because I'm like, this is reality.
I've noticed that too. I guess maybe it was like around 35-ish. Like my ability to do like volume, like multiple sets within one movement.
Yeah.
I fatigue so much more like 3 sets in than I used to
Okay.
ever. It was really something I had to work on.
Okay, well, that makes me feel better. I also am still in transition. Not like anybody cares. I'm still in transition, which is why I'm at my uncle's. So I'm still kind of like couch surfing. So my body is not like, she's just not that happy right now. So I keep having to remind myself, I'm like, I'm literally doing the best I can with the circumstances that I have. So it's all good. Like, it is what it is. But
Yeah.
I'm excited for today's conversation around veganism. And I don't know much more other than the study that you had wanted to talk about around like heart health.
Well, when I had read this paper a couple weeks ago, I like earmarked it because I thought of us, because we've talked about vegan diets before, and we've talked, just like how we think about and talk about nutrition approaches. So for everybody following along at home, this is it. So it was titled A Systematic Review of the Association Between Vegan Diets and the Risk of Cardiovascular Disease, which is a mouthful. Basically what it means is it was a paper that was reviewing a bunch of other papers where a bunch of research studies, where they grade the research studies kind of on quality and rigor. And they were looking at the connection between vegan diets and cardiovascular disease. Now, I think that cardiovascular disease is like a good marker, because like you could compare any sort of diet to anything, like vegan diets to diabetes, where they've shown to have a beneficial effect. You could show it, oftentimes it'll be done with weight loss or joint pain or, like anything. I think cardiovascular disease is a good one because your heart is such a central piece of your overall physiology. And generally, if something's going to improve your heart health, it's going to have, really beneficial ramifications across multiple systems in your body. So that's why I thought this was particularly interesting. But, basically the key take homes, without getting into kind of the boring nitty gritty of it, was that, there aren't a lot of high quality studies really looking at the impact of vegan diets on cardiovascular disease. And, that the researchers, they found, I highlighted two things at the end to note because I thought they were important, was that they found, and this is going to drive some people on the internet crazy, no significant evidence of an association between adherence to a vegan diet and risk of primary cardiovascular disease or coronary heart disease events. So heart attack, atherosclerosis, something like that. Like atherosclerosis being like plaque in your arteries. But then what they go on to say is that, one of the things that is really positive of the vegan diets is the nutrient profile. So all the beneficial nutrients that you're going to be getting. But that you could get similar improvements through diets that aren't vegan diets, particularly ones that emphasize plant food consumption. And I would also add like minimally or unprocessed foods, which is things that we've also talked about. And then the next paragraph, which is kind of the yin to the yang of that statement, is that they, another study or two other studies had shown adverse effects of vegan diets and in cardiovascular disease. And they liken that to some of the nutrients that are lower in vegan diets, commenting about certain essential amino acids, B12, and long chain omega-3s like fish oil. And so I thought that this presented, like in the discussion, a really nice discussion point that was central to a lot of what we talk about. Like, look, there are positives to this, dietary approach, and there are some negatives to this dietary approach, that you can reap all the benefits with a less restrictive approach if you wanted to. Like kind of the in-between paragraph that I didn't read at the sake of losing all our listeners was, was basically like, if you followed an American Heart Association style diet, which would be kind of a healthy omnivore diet, you could get the same effects. So they're basically saying, look, you don't have to fully restrict yourself to only plants to get these benefits, but there's a big benefit to emphasizing eating a lot of plants in your diet, but that animal products bring in, beneficial things too, and that needs to be considered. Which,
and like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to just wrap it up with saying that's so much of what we talk about in how we encourage people to think about what they're eating, what are the choices that they're making, are those choices, actually hindering certain aspects of, of their nutrition and of their health, and what can you do about that?
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think it's always the kind of like the theme of what we do is bring the facts. Well, what you do is bring the facts and then let people make their own decision. I also think that tis with most diets that people go on, it causes a swing. So what happens is it's so extreme and most people can't handle or can't sustain that. And then it swings all the way back the other way. And I think that's always the conversation that we're having. Instead of the huge pendulum swing, instead of the big black and white, like how do you find your own gray area? Shout out to everybody, that is vegan, especially for environmental issues. Like that's awesome. That's not something I personally couldn't sustain it. I would feel, I don't know how people go without enough protein. Like I don't even understand how vegans get enough protein. Like that is something, it wouldn't work for me. Like I would be a zombie walking around.
Yeah, it's challenging for sure.
And it's expensive. That's the other thing. Like we talk about this and a lot of these things are super elitist. Like it's very privileged to be able to diet or be able to like eat in that way. And it's not something that like the majority of the world can afford to do. So I think it's great to bring the facts. I also think, so I'm practicing something new. I'm practicing gray area.
Great.
I don't know. It probably doesn't come as any surprise. I'm very black or white. My opinions are very extreme. And I'm very loud about my opinions. And so I'm really practicing gray. Like what I choose to do is my choice. What others choose to do is their choice. And so I think that's what happens here. Is like a lot of people tend to get on something and then get on their high horse. So I think, again, like I just appreciate talking about the facts of, these different diets and ways to take care of yourself.
I think you made a really good point where you said sometimes with these, diets that pigeonhole themselves in one area versus another, that it can be really expensive, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I think, a lot of eating a vegan diet can be very expensive, especially if you're going to more of the processed plant-based foods, that are kind of engineered to be like more animal-based foods. And, same thing, like if we go way other end of the spectrum, which used to be like a low-carb diet, but now we could say is like a carnivore diet, right? Like that's not necessarily the cheapest diet either if you're like, buying all kinds of these, animal products that on a per pound basis can be more expensive.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that especially I find people on the internet that tout like this is the approach you have to use or the financial or elitist part is totally lost. And, I had this conversation once with a supermarket executive from H-E-B, which is a big chain down in Texas. And they were saying, one of the things they struggle with is helping people with different family budgets still feel like they're making good choices.
Yeah. Because
if you are like $50 for the week for a family of 4, right? And you've been told you have to eat organic produce, like you're screwed.
Yeah.
Or like, what are the options along the way that are still super healthy? Like, it could be the frozen green beans. It could be like low sodium canned vegetables, like whatever you can get. And it kind of goes along with your like living the, this grave thing, you get the best with what you can get and really feel good and move forward with that. Because having that positive mindset about like, hey, I'm making the best choice I can for my body, I think that's going to empower you to move forward on a daily basis. And for me, for my money, it's compliance. Like, what are you going to stick to the most? And you're going to stick to something that you feel really good about doing. Yeah.
Amen. Love it. Can you talk about some of the benefits that you see in a vegan diet? Like what, a handful of the ones off the top of your head?
Sure. It's like from a fiber perspective, which is what people generally struggle with in their diet. Fiber is great. Vegan diets, I think, are very great for controlling appetite and satiety because you're eating so many foods that have this high water content inside of it. And there's so much fiber and so much volume. Like if you have a big appetite, it's a great diet. And that's really why, like, I have my appetite's ridiculous. And like I use vegetables to keep that in check, because I could eat all the time because I like it. And that allows me to eat a lot of food, feel good and satisfied, but still hit those health parameters that I like to. I find that oftentimes people who follow vegan diets really double down on beans and legumes, which I think most non-vegan vegetarian followers neglect. So that, I think beans are great, but they get pushed aside by so many other things. Like if your food choices are wide open, then there's a lot of reasons that you could justify not eating beans. But so I think that there's a big push with plant-based proteins. And while, research really consistently continues to show that animal-based proteins are of higher quality and are like easier to digest and for your body to access those nutrients, when you still focus on plant-based proteins, those are a lot of foods that are really nutrient rich. There are a lot of foods that have, fiber and they have a lot of vitamins and minerals, and they're going to still have some protein in them. So a lot of those foods are really high quality foods that you should be eating. So, fiber, the nutrient density of those foods, being able to eat a lot and feel satisfied is another huge benefit. You get a lot of antioxidants, I think, and this is especially if we're talking about, because I think globally we're thinking it's the unprocessed and minimally processed foods, because you can get a lot of plant-based foods that are on the high processed end of the spectrum.
Like Burger King now. I mean, I'm not shouting out Burger King. So many people have completely processed.
Yeah. So you could go with the Whopper from the plant-based meats. Yeah. And the plant-based meat. And and exactly, like that's not necessarily a good choice. And I think there was a huge push for a long time about plant-based diets. And now it's starting to come around where people are like, hey, that's pretty vague, because there's a lot of things that call, like I'm just drinking vodka today, right? It's a plant-based diet. Like, no, I'm not just drinking vodka today, but if I were to make that choice, right, you could. I guess you're drinking bourbon today?
Yes! No. Start my day with coffee, not bourbon.
But you know, that like it's easy to construe like,
Yeah.
oh, this is plant-based, so it's healthy. And so I think it's worth saying, hey, we're talking about these minimally processed and unprocessed, plant products.
Yeah.
So if you're basically corralling yourself to mostly fruits and vegetables and legumes and those things, like those are the things that people need to eat more of.
Yeah.
Those are the things that are going to make you, that's a huge, it should be a half to three quarters of your plate anyway. And so that's why it's really important to double down. And, as this research paper showed, like the other side of the equation is those essential amino acids. So that high quality protein that's going to help with recovery and performance and muscle growth. Like that's really important. Those long chain omega-3 fats that you get from oily fish, that's really important for joint health, brain development, immune function, and even mood. So there's a lot of those, some other vitamins like B12, which is in just animal products except for certain yeasts, right? But there are certain nutrients that you get, zinc and iron. With animal products you get iron that's a heme iron, which is more readily absorbed by your body. So it's let's harness the good, and then let's say, okay, where are the negatives, and either eat some of those foods to make up for that, or find other ways to do that.
Yeah.
Like whether you're going to double down with an iron supplement, or if you're going to take a B12 supplement or something like that.
So most people that are on a vegan diet are finding themselves supplementing a lot then?
You would have, you're going to have to supplement. And I think especially people who are on the more, dialed in nutritional side, especially with athletic performance, are definitely going to be using protein supplements too.
Yeah.
Because like you said, you said before, like, I'm not sure how people following a vegan diet get enough protein.
Yeah.
And because it's hard, especially if you're training hard, performing hard.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of, now there are much better plant-based protein supplements.
Yeah.
So that don't taste like grass clippings. So that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. I mean, VitaHustle's vegan vanilla. I choose the vegan over the whey.
Yeah, the vegan vanilla is the best I've had.
Fuego. Yeah.
Totally.
I also think it's like I can't remember the show that came out, but like Arnold Schwarzenegger, so many people also are sold on it because they think it's gonna like help them look a certain way also, which is like, I'm like, Arnold Schwarzenegger, there's a lot he's doing besides a vegan diet.
Okay, so that I was talking with my wife about this the other, like that specific thing. We were more talking, it came up like, it was like people like trying to get you how to make money on the internet. And like the joke was step 4 was have a father who owns a Fortune 100 company. Because, it needs to be like, people need to be honest about the advice they're giving and how they got there. And I agree. Arnold, I'm a huge fan of what he's done for health and fitness. But for him to be like, oh, it's all about a vegan diet. Like, dude, like, he used to eat. Like, come on. Like, how many eggs, right? Like, how many eggs?
But to each their own. The other thing I was going to say, because I think what I find most beneficial, like when I did the Whole30, I'm not touting, I'm just like, I really enjoyed learning about myself when I did the Whole30. Like, I really enjoyed learning about like what irritated me, my food patterns, my like choices, my habits. Like, you learn a lot about yourself. So I also think there's a way of like going about things that maybe a lot of us need a jump start. Like, we need to kind of follow rules and restrictions. It's like a 30-day program to get us jump started. And I think if that's what you choose, like, that's great. I think you can learn a lot from it. And then you can take away some of the things that you learned about yourself and then maybe kind of tweak with the help also of a dietitian and make something more sustainable for yourself. Because I think that's where I think the downfall is that so many people want to do something, good for themselves, especially like nutrition wise. They want to make the right choices, but it's just not sustainable. Like, a lot of people don't have the time, energy, finances, effort to be able to really like live a vegan diet or any strict diet. And then we go completely the opposite way, which, isn't good either.
No, I think that's a really good idea. That's like something that I'll work on with clients, is how do we create kind of like these little challenges where we're not saying let's swear off this and we're doubling down on this forever, which forever is always 3 weeks or 4 weeks anyway when you when you do that. But, we go through the motions of eating on a daily basis, really not paying that much attention. Like you said, it kind of, the Whole30 broke your pattern. and your eating pattern and made you think about it more. And, forcing yourself or challenging yourself to do something for a set period of time, it does help you reestablish, well, wait, what are these food patterns that I have? Like, why do I do this? Because just because you do it every day doesn't mean you pay attention. Like,
Totally.
I'm not an exponential better driver now at 39 than I was at 30, right? Just because I do it every day, because
Right.
so much of driving is on autopilot.
Yeah.
But if you can create a mechanism which, wait, I'm going to pay more attention so I can like consciously get better,
Yeah.
then you can really make strides. And I think doing that with your nutrition is super important to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's a great wake up call. And I think that anybody that chooses to do that, I think it's awesome. I just am always fighting for the more sustainable thing, because I think so much of the health and fitness world is really just not sustainable for the majority of people. Like, it works for a small group of people that can like really stay within those boundaries, but I think so many people just cannot stick with it. And then we fall off the other way, which is like, find what's sustainable. Find what you learned about yourself, tweak a few things, and then carry on your merry way.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's what can I, like, going into it saying, well, I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm going to do, like, for your example, the whole 30 for 30 days. And I don't foresee this to be my life, but let's see what I'm going to learn and what I'm going to get out of it.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's like training too. Like, you go into, whatever, a new training block or a new style of training, not because you envision, I'm not gonna be a power lifter for my whole life.
Right.
I could learn some things about doing sets of 4 to 5 reps more often.
Right. And also, you can't do that. You wouldn't even get the same effect. You know what I mean? Like, you can't. Like, you cycle your training. Like, training programs literally cycle. So yeah, with nutrition, I mean, I go in, maybe it's just me, but I go in waves all the time. I mean, I did the whole 30. I learned a lot of stuff. I was like, oh, no sugar for me. No dairy for me, very little gluten. And then listen, last night I ate cake at my niece's birthday. Like, it was all out the window. But I'm going to come back around at some point in time, adding more fruits and vegetables, and eating out less for me is the biggest thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think and I always encourage people to have, what are these 2 or 3 things that you're working on that are pushing your comfort zone? Maybe it's an adherence thing. Maybe it's a new food thing. Maybe it's a volume. Like, I'm going to eat 800 grams of vegetables today. And like, what does that look like for 3 weeks? Because all of a sudden you're looking like, wow, I don't eat enough. Like, I'm definitely not eating enough vegetables. Or you're like, well, it turns out I do.
Oh no, we lost you. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, I can hear you.
Sorry.
I don't know what happened.
No, I got phone calls.
Oh.
I didn't go on silent.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, is there anything else around the vegan diet? I don't know if there's any cons that you wanted to discuss that people maybe who are on a vegan diet or thinking of it should maybe think about.
I think the one, and this was actually, came from something else that I was reading about, and about women in athletics. And the big issue of underconsumption of food and grossly underconsumption of calories. They used to call it like the female athletic triad, and it has a different name now, which I'm drawing a blank on, because they basically wanted to extend it actually to men too, and say like this underconsumption of food or energy, because they're scientists, right, is really plaguing athletics. And I think that one of the cons people will get into, especially athletes who have a high level of energy expenditure, is they also get into, well, I want to look a certain way, so I'm going to eat a vegan diet, but it's not supporting their athletic performance. It's not supporting their energy needs. And so what happens is they end up having to underconsume so much. They end up underconsuming so many calories, right? Which has really negative health ramifications. So it like literally does the opposite. Yeah. Kind of like like what I had said, one of the reasons I eat so many vegetables is because it allows me to eat a lot of food.
Yeah.
But control my overall energy intake.
Yeah.
So I think the downfall that people who are very athletic and burn a lot of calories on a daily basis, that's their downfall, is not getting enough calories. And I know even when we did the shows, when you were doing the whole 30, you were struggling like with the carb choices to get that energy there.
Yeah.
So I think it's huge. It's so important to eat to your lifestyle. You gotta fuel, you gotta fuel your performance. You gotta fuel your life.
Yeah.
And because oftentimes the other end is, you end up on the other end of the spectrum, really under fueling compared to what you're expending, and you don't get where you want to go.
Yeah, no, amen. And then I guess one of the last con would be also like the supplementation, like having to be pretty aware of the extra supplementation that it takes to be on a vegan diet.
Yeah, we talked about this when we did like a ketogenic diet too. Whenever you get very restrictive on either end of the spectrum for any macronutrient, that means you're going to start restricting whole groups of foods, which delivered to your diet, not just protein or carbohydrate or whatnot, but vitamins and minerals and antioxidants. So if you're not including those, you got to be dialed in and switched on and thinking, well, what do I need to get?
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that's why, like, something like a Whole30, it's not a sustainable diet. Like, they're like, this is for 30 days so that you can take note of the things that are inflaming your system. And maybe that's like maybe that's a good thing for a lot of other people, that like, if you want to be vegan, maybe you test it out, like give yourself 30 days, test it out, and then like check back in, see how you're feeling. And if you can afford to be working with a dietitian, like obviously I think it's so important to have somebody who really is an expert in those fields to be like guiding you along if you can. But the most important thing is to be checking in. Like for me, it's like paying attention to my energy levels. That was a huge one for me. Like I just had I was sleeping fine, but like had no energy, like not like none. And so for me, it was like, okay, well that wouldn't, like, this is not sustainable.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think looking at your life and food and how you feel yourself should be, in my mind, it's an exploration. Because like the body is so complicated. Yeah. Like even if you read like every paper published, like when it comes down to you and all the different factors going on in your life, like it's impossible to know. So you just gotta say, I'm just figuring it out.
Yeah.
Or like I said to my daughter the other day, and she looked at me like I was crazy. It's like throwing wet spaghetti against the wall. She was like, "What are you talking about?"
You never do that with them? That's how we used to test noodles.
Exactly. I'm like, that's how you test noodles. And she was like, "Dad, what are you talking about?" So you got to look at your life with nutrition as like throwing wet spaghetti against the wall. Like you don't don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
And try things out. Some stuff works, some stuff doesn't, and double down on the stuff that does. Yeah.
Amen. I love that. Well, on that note, I feel like that's just the theme always of the show. So I just appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah.
We gotta keep saying it 'cause nobody listens.
I know. But I appreciate also that you're coming with the facts. Like I think I always reiterate that like Dr. Mike is coming with the facts, like scientific facts. So I think it's always an important thing. It's not really just like popular opinion that's discussed here. And it's always so that then everybody can do their own kind of like have their own takeaway and make their own decisions.
Yeah.
Gray area.
Yeah.
Practice the
gray area. That's actually gray is my jam.
No, it's been so good for me. On a random side, it helps me let go of so many things. I realize how much I'm like, well, this is this and this is this. And it's like, no, it's not. Maybe it's like that for you guys. It's not like that for everybody else. I'm like, oh yeah, gray area.
Gray.
Do you? Okay. Well, Dr. Mike, it was so awesome to be back. I am definitely excited to get back on regular discussions with you because I just love learning from you. So thank you.
No, it was great seeing you.
Okay. And we'll shout out.
Next show, we talked about this before, we're going to talk about inflammation, kind of tease everybody kind of like the good and the bad of inflammation. So there's like a good side that we want to talk about.
I'm definitely excited for this one. And as always, if any of you guys have questions, make sure you can just DM Dr. Mike, VitaHustle, or I, and we'll make sure to include them in an upcoming episode.
Yep. And shout out to VitaHustle. Thank you for letting this happen. See you guys.
See ya.